We had this dog in shelter. Let's call her Molly. She was found dumped at a playground in a crate, fully matted, covered in feces and urine. Clearly, a case where this little dog had been in this crate for gosh knows how long to get in such terrible condition. Well, the shelter did manage to get her some medical attention, groom her, and she was transferred to us. The first week at our shelter, she stayed in her crate. The crate door was wide open, food provided both in and out of the crate, but she stayed in the crate. She could move out of the crate, but she did not. Despite the opportunity to move, she chose not to. From the outside, this would look like a case of learned helplessness, often the result of repeated aversive experiences where the dog will not move. But is it really? Learned helplessness is one of those terms we hear tossed around by trainers and sheltering folks alike. In this episode of Learning About Dogs, Kay Laurence of Learning About Dogs and I, Sue McGuire, a TACL certified trainer and a manager of a canine behavior program, dive into this topic. This is something that we see in sheltering quite a bit, bandied
Mm,
about.
mm,
Dog afraid to move, a dog, we see even afraid well, a dog observed not moving in a tiny ball, back of the kennel, multiple days, multiple interactions. Uh, Kennel techs might be going in there and cleaning the kennel. The dog doesn't move, could get out of the way of water, etc. Not that they spray them on water or anything like that. But, and then they say, oh, they just learned how to be helpless.
oh,
And
okay.
it just it kicks me in the chest because I think
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
that
yeah.
I think they've probably heard it somewhere. I thought it was time to, and also on some of the questions that we get on whilst I'm learning to the podcast, whilst I'm listening to the podcast questions, is what do you do with the dog that's shut down? What do you do with a dog who has learned helplessness? And I think, it's really interesting pulling that out a little bit. So let's talk about it. It
Well,
actually did start
yeah,
from
yeah,
experiments
yeah,
with dogs, but ugh. Ugh.
yeah. With the electric shocks and all that. Yeah, I think it's a cool term to use that sounds like you may know what you're talking about, but in actual fact, I doubt if we do. It's a bit like reactivity.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell me anything useful whatsoever. So if somebody says, "Oh, my dog does learned helpless," or it's learned helplessness, okay. So under what conditions? Well, he's normally good when we go for a walk, but if I put him in the kitchen in the crate, and I'm like, well, then you haven't got learned helplessness. You've got something that is associated with those conditions.
Hmm.
If you probably took a perfectly healthy dog of mine or yours that had been brought up in a normal environment and stuffed it in a rescue centre kennels, I have no doubt that the stress of all the other dogs would impact on that dog and you wouldn't see that dog behave normally.
Hmm.
Yep, they're not normal under those conditions.
Oh gosh,
Surely.
no.
Same as if you or I suddenly had to go to jail. Yes. And everything that we'd normally been able to have control of in our lives is taken away from you and you're put in jail. You're putting on their clothing, you have to eat the food they give you. Within 24 hours of that experience, I probably would not be behaving as I would normally.
Hmm.
So there's a
Hmm.
certain degree, surely, when you have these intake dogs, that they're in shock. Yes, they're in such a strange and alien environment, it might be safer just to do nothing. And I think the whole business of what's the difference between learned helplessness and depression, and how would you know with a dog? Do we know dogs suffer from depression? Well, yes, we've seen
Yes.
dogs certainly go from outgoing, happy behaviors into very introvert behaviors when maybe a member of the family's gone or one of the other dogs has died. Yep. Or if they're in pain, there's a whole range of things going on that needs a lot more diagnosis than just adding this label, oh, it's learned helplessness. So where do you think it's originated? It's just cool to use those words.
Yeah, it is interesting how the original experiments. I mean, seriously, people just look on Wikipedia. It's actually a fairly
Yeah,
decent
yeah.
entry about it. It is interesting how they chose dogs. And the first thing that he did in the experiment is not show the dog a pathway to escape the shock.
Yeah.
Uh, and well, I said, well, that's different. And he even Seligman admitted it was a little, well, it's not what he was expecting to find. Ah, so
But you could see it with, the classic stay training. Yes, so the dog's on a lead. I don't mind what type of collar it's on. And the dog is put into a sit. And if it tries to do anything else but a sit, it's manipulated into a sit. Okay. Well, oh, look, there's a butterfly there. I'm going, oh, no, you're going to sit. And it keeps getting manipulated back into the sit. And you end up thinking you've trained your dog to stay, but that probably is again, you've taken away all other options except that behavior, so you dare not move. That would look like learned helplessness.
hmm,
It's not a shock as such, but every option that you try is cut off.
how is learned
Yeah, and that was
helplessness?
the original stay training.
Yeah,
And
okay,
often these
so
dogs are sitting still and doing a stay because they daren't move. I mean, that's not unfamiliar to most people who've been around training for more than a few years. The
yeah.
dog stays because it daren't move. It doesn't know what else to do. It can't think of any other solution. So you end up with this learned helplessness.
So this is one of those terms that seems used a little too broadly. Um,
Yeah, because it doesn't help. I mean, I know some people use the term when they first get into clicker training and you're supposed to sit down with a clicker and a box of food and wait for the dog to offer a behavior. And
mhm.
basically, the dogs do nothing. Oh, he's got learned helplessness. No, he hasn't. He just doesn't know what you want him to do because suddenly you're staring at him and you're sitting perfectly still. Oh, okay, so the dog copies you. Well, he's not offering anything. He must have learned helplessness. No, no, he's mimicking exactly what you're doing nothing. Okay, right. So I put an object down, the classic. Okay, so let's say we put down I don't know, a plastic spoon on the floor. Yep, he's still not doing anything with it. I'll tell you what, pick up the plastic spoon and talk to it in a very, very interesting voice. And, clutch it in your hands and just under your chin as if it's something really, really precious and stroke it a bit. Oh, wow. Then put it on the floor and see what happens. And I put money on it. The dog's going to sniff it to see what it is. Cool, click. But it's just reflecting and what you had an object that was of interest to you, so they will want to see what it is. But if you're doing nothing, waiting for them to do things, think back of what their life was like. I would look at a puppy. So um, I have a video of the puppies. They're about 6 weeks old, and I think with this litter, I couldn't let them out side much because we had an infestation of ants. So they had to do most of their awake time in the kitchen. So I basically removed every single piece of furniture in the kitchen and the hall and the staircase, and that became their playground. Otherwise, they would just be obnoxious. The smaller the area you can find the puppies to, the less stimulation interaction they've got. It all tends to turn inward into the group. So
hmm
they needed lots of things around to go and do things. So there's a picture or a video of one of the puppies trying to pull a tea towel off the back of a chair that's in the kitchen. And you can see her jumping, and she's trying, and she's getting this, and it's nearly there, but her balance is not quite good enough. But she's sitting working at this for a good 10 minutes, and she eventually gets the tea towel down. Good puppy. Yes, good puppy. It wanted to explore and learn and, develop its knowledge of the world around it. Normal puppy. To somebody else, that would have been naughty. It would have been scolded. It would have been told off and put back to bed. Now, if that happens often enough, that puppy's going to stop exploring and discovering and finding out. And it's going to lose its confidence in doing it and lose the skills that it would have learnt if it'd been allowed to learn what to do to be able to do that successfully. So that can contribute to what one home would see as naughty dogs. Let's get rid of the naughtiness, take away all this environmental enrichment, keep it in a small area where it can't do anything wrong. Or, as you or I would see this great puppy, like this one, let's just channel this desire to learn into something more practical that's safe.
Yes. Mm.
Same with kids, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you
when
want them to learn. You want.
we want them to learn, we want them. So what I struggle with is that they've learned not to learn. I said no.
Yeah,
That's not the right terminology. They have learned not to experiment, quite possibly.
I think
Uh,
they've learnt that exploring and trying things out ends up with things being taken away.
mhm.
It's also, if you want, if you're looking for your dog to be, what should we call the opposite of learned helplessness? Actively engaging,
Aging.
you need
Mhm.
to stimulate that engagement in some way. The same as if we were playing the table game. If I'm doing it with a group of 19-year-old computer students, it's going to be Lego bricks. Yeah, because
Yeah.
most boys of that age want to do things with Lego bricks. And we weren't going to give them Barbie dolls, so that was fine. Because they'll do things with those you don't want to know about. But if you're working with 6-year-old girls, you'd put down lots of things like little bits of plastic jewelry that they can put together, fabrics that they could plait, or buttons and things that would be more appealing to those learners to explore and see what they could do with it. um, and I think stimulating learning is the absolutely the job of the teacher, not the job of the learner to try and work out what to do.
Mhm.
I just remember when I was probably about 11. So the first school, the junior school, I was quite good at art, but looking back on it, I had a teacher that was certainly very able to bring out what I could do drawing and painting wise. Um, so when I went to the next school, they obviously sent something ahead of me to say that, oh, yeah. And I got bumped up to the class above me to do art, which was a bit of a bad idea because they streamed you. You had to join a higher group for certain topics.
Mhm.
And if you gave me an iris in a vase, I could absolutely paint that no trouble at all. If you gave me a landscape, yeah, no problem. And I probably could have done the sort of art that you can paint something that looks like a photograph. Um,
Okay.
but what I couldn't do was anything abstract. And I remember sitting in front of a white sheet of paper, and the only colours we were allowed to use were shades of red. And she wanted us to paint a picture for 2 hours on energy. And I
Oh.
was 11.
Oh.
And I had not a clue what to do. I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know how you did it. And so I was not a proper artist.
Oh.
Can you see? Because I obviously shut down.
Mm. Mm.
Are you
So
with me?
that's
That
it.
the
Yeah.
whole I didn't fit their model of what an artist should be, which is somebody that should maybe do more abstract type of work. Yep, it just didn't. Probably looking back at it's graphics is what I could do. I couldn't do art for art's sake, and I
Art.
can still look at abstract art and get absolutely nothing out of it whatsoever.
Mhm.
But I can look at a clever drawing of something and fabulous. But that's it. There's all
Yep.
different types of artists. Just because you can't do one sort or another doesn't make it any better or any less. So if our expectations are that all dogs should be able to do this, then it's just as unrealistic as all children or all people should be able to do something.
Yeah. And then so when we look at dogs in our sheltering environment, we just recently brought in probably about 20, 25 dogs from another part of the state of California, which is one of those typical places where there's overcrowded shelters and very lucky shelters that aren't so
Hmm.
overcrowded. So we pull and we share the load, and
Hmm.
within the first, 3, 4 days, these dogs are just, what the heck? Um, and I have to constantly go in there and talk to the volunteers and say, give this dog a break, expect nothing. Just let this dog
Yeah, yeah,
be.
yeah,
Let this dog
yeah,
absorb where it is. I
yeah,
mean, how
yeah,
would you like to be in a crate on a van, traveling for 10 hours, not being able to
yeah,
relieve
yeah.
yourself? Talk to me after I get off an international flight.
Well, yeah,
Ah,
yeah. Especially as I remember I going down to our rescue centre, and I had my dogs in the back of the car, and I was there for about an hour. We were talking about some kennel design stuff, and when I got back to my dogs, they were all sitting in the back of the car shaking. They hadn't even left the car, but they were all sitting in the back of the
oh.
car shaking. And I thought, oh, so the noise of the dogs in the kennels, or the scent, I don't know which, affected my dogs.
Mhm.
So, there's things going on here that we do not know enough about. And I like that project where they just go and sit in a kennel and read to the dogs from a book. It doesn't matter. It's just a way to say that, yeah, no, no, we're not expecting you to do anything. We don't want you to be grateful. Just unwind. I had a rescue Gordon here for, again, I think it had a pretty easygoing life in the sense it was not taken into big urban areas, and the owner had died. It had gone to, I think I was its third home because it had been in our Gordon rescues over here don't tend to put them into main rescue. They go to other Gordon owners. So I was the third to take it on because when it was in this breeder's kennels, it just sat in the corner and did nothing. And it
Hmm.
hadn't done much for 3 weeks. They couldn't even get it to go out the kennel. It didn't want to eat. And it was summertime, so we got him out of the car, and I have quite good fencing around the garden. He just went down the back of the garden. He sat there. Okay, he didn't want to come near me. The other dogs just, yeah, whatever. Just, I wouldn't say ignored it, but didn't bother him at all. It's
Right.
just, yeah, all right, yeah. Just looked him from a distance and carried on about their own business. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I can't go and drag him in because it just wasn't going to happen. Now, I'm lucky enough that I could just leave him down there for a while and we put some water out, put some food out. And it took about 3 days, but it was the other dogs that interacted with him, not me. I.e., if the other
Mm.
dogs went near him, he approached them. If I was around, he just stopped moving. And over about a week, they got him to, you don't think they sort of had a plan, but he started to follow them around the garden much more. And what I did was sprinkle food around. So as they were walking around eating stuff in the ground, he started doing the same sort of thing. And within about 10 days, he was coming in and out the back door. And I did nothing. It was just de stress. Don't worry about it. Nothing's bad's going to happen. Get your equilibrium back together again. And it was very hard because I very much wanted to do something,
Oh, sure.
you
Oh,
know,
sure.
pick for this and throw a treat for that and all the rest of it. And I wish I'd had a camera watching and monitoring it, but it was the other dogs that just didn't bother him. They didn't go up and cause him any trouble. They didn't try and play with him. They were just hanging out. And one of the other collie girls would sit nearby, and that was facing the same way as him, not looking at him and working him.
Hmm.
She would just be nearby, and they'd both be facing the same way. And I think that was a connection of some sort.
Wow.
I see that often with mine. They'll all sit in the garden, 4 or 5 of them sit spaced out, but they're all facing the same way. Not alertly, they're just lying comfortably together.
I think I see the biggest changes in our dogs in sheltering when we bring them out as a group and
Yeah,
just let
yeah,
them
yeah,
sit in the sun. And we spend probably, I watched one
yeah,
yesterday, probably a good hour, hour and a half, letting dogs, moving dogs in and out. And
yeah, yeah,
the personality is just
yeah.
blossom, and you can see
To me,
the
it's a
future.
vital part of every dog's. Mine, I expect them, unless the weather is atrocious, to spend at least 2 hours out of doors without me in the garden just watching life.
Yes.
Which out here is not people, it's just wildlife.
Yeah.
And every now and again they'll have a bit of bargee because a fox has gone through somewhere, or a couple of crows will be arguing on a tree and they'll watch that, or the blackbirds are over there doing that. Oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
fine. And they seem to
Yeah.
be, in my book, very content. It's not exercise so much as natural enrichment.
Being.
The same as a couple old sitting on the porch, rocking the chair, watching the world go by.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Oh, oh, it's near and dear to my heart, as you can tell.
Well,
These
that's
labels.
to me is rehabilitation, not you know certain exercises that we all know about trying to rehabilitate the dog or get it to get over something or some counter conditioning or some desensitization. No, let
Mm.
it just get to the stage where it would like to learn something, not have to learn something.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Interesting how I'm just kind of, while we're chatting, I'm just kind of reading a little bit of Seligman's work, and he theorized that the traumatic event, it wasn't a traumatic event, but the lack of control over one's choice to use a normal escape avoidance
Mm.
behavior created this learned helplessness. Both a traumatic experience as well as removing subjects' control over the environment are necessary ingredients. And I went, don't you think that sometimes just simply sitting in a kennel is a traumatic event enough? I
Yeah,
guess
yeah,
it
yeah,
would be
yeah.
considered a traumatic event. So what?
Particularly
So
if you're picking up, it's the same as vets' waiting rooms.
oh, ugh.
Perfectly normal dog can go in there and they'll suddenly go, "This is odd." Now, are they smelling, anal glands?
Yeah,
Being,
yeah,
what is it? But and perfect, I personally never waited in a waiting room with a dog for that reason. They're outside, and when the vet's ready, I will go and get them, bring them in.
exactly.
And if it takes an extra 60 seconds, that's fine. I'll pay for it. But I'm not sitting here with my dog, letting all the world touch it and pour over it, and the poor cat in the basket that's by the side of it, squealing its head off. They
Mm.
just don't need this stuff. Just don't need it. So, if you put these dogs in an environment together, and I've seen some shelters that had plenty of money, so the actual physical properties were very lush, as I would say. The dogs had double glazing. Wow. But the kennels were all facing each other.
Uh,
Yep. So you had this corridor down the middle with all the kennels on opposite sides, all facing inwards. And I'm like, yeah, that's not so good for the dogs, is it? Because any dog
no.
that walked the alleyway down the middle, goodness me, it was not good at all.
Yeah.
So the ones I'm used to over here either have the one-way mirrors, where the dogs can't see out on one
Sure.
side, or the carousel format where the dogs can be taken in and out without being running the gauntlet.
Mm.
Because those screaming events have to stress the dogs up one way or the other.
Hmm. So we could talk about when people have dogs that are in their home already, not shelter dogs. Maybe they're a new dog. Maybe they came from the shelter. Who cares? But um, how do we help people identify what might be going on with their dog when they're interacting with them? Um, you know, here's an example. A couple weeks ago, maybe it was just last week, where we were talking about you were teaching Zip to jump through the hoop, and you
Uh,
brought out the hoop, and she looked at that and went under the table. Oh,
yeah.
must have been beaten with a hoop. But she did a nice avoidance behavior. I'm just saying, I can see how people can
Hmm.
go to these dark places and just make this leap of must have been beaten by a man, must have been, oh, you just name it. And now, how do we help these
Well,
people?
yeah. Well, I think first of all, I think it says change. So if you were doing some training and fatigue is a big player in just not being able to work out what's going on now. So maybe if I brought the hoop out at the beginning of a training session rather than after she'd been doing a fair bit of stuff, that might have been different. Um, there may be something that we're not aware of, that there's a door in your house that shuts a certain way and makes a certain noise,
Hmm.
and it just caught the dog's toe or its tail, and your clicker or the way you push a chair back may mimic that sound. Um, there's all sorts of things that don't necessarily mean the dog's had a bad experience of them, but they have good reason to be suspicious of them. If they're suspicious of them, whatever the reason is good to them. It
Yes,
might not be to us.
absolutely.
Oh, it's all right. It's just so and so. Thunder. Well, how for goodness sake are you going to explain that to a dog?
Yeah.
We have bird scarers every now and again, to keep the pigeons off the rape. How the hell do you explain that to a dog? Oh, yes, it's just an airplane. Uh huh. Is it going to eat me? No. So I have. She's getting a bit old now. She's 13. We have at certain times of the year when the weather's good, one of the tourist attractions is hot air balloons.
Oh,
So these
yes.
come over, not having taken off not far away, so they're pretty low. Now, from a dog's point of view, you have something that breathes fire, moves silently, is up there, which means it's coming from the predator world. Your predators are coming down from above and your prey is normally below your eye level. And you can hear people talking, but you can't see them. Absolutely freaked her out when she's out in the fields and she saw all the hot air balloons coming through. She can get so freaked out by the sound of the burners going and without even seeing them that it will upset her for several hours after that. And she goes in
Mm.
the garden and she freaks out at the moon. Yes,
Yeah.
she's standing there and going, "What the hell's going on? There's a moon out there now." And it's like, yeah, I can't explain it to you. It's okay. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother the other dogs. It never bothered her puppies. Really, she didn't transfer it. It was just her.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't, you can't make that right. And I assure you, we went through all the whole, oh God, here the balloon's coming. Let's do some counter conditioning. Yeah, it
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
work.
Yeah.
No, no,
Oh,
no, no,
oh.
that ain't gonna work. You're too late for that now.
Yeah.
It's not we could get the burners or something, but it was just like, yeah, okay, all right. Shall we go home? Yes, please.
Yeah.
Bloody thing, it's gonna
Yeah.
come, it's coming. No, we'll go inside now, so that'll be all right. Yeah, okay, fine. So
Oh.
sure, they can take a. I mean, it might be your passion to have your dog, you know, running along after hot air balloons one day. I don't know.
Or
But if
chasing the
something
moon.
to them is already hardwired down to be keep away from that, if it's not something that's an essential part of life, let's not bother with it. And she's fine through the hoops now. I just had to, fix it. Funnily enough, it was me holding the hoop that was the issue, not the hoop
Uh-huh.
itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so once I fixed the hoop and I was doing another job somewhere else, she was, okay, yeah, it's fine. So something
Yeah.
about it, I don't know,
Yeah.
spooked her out. She's a fairly easily spooked dog. Others, I like that sort of sensitivity. It's not a bad thing. Dogs that are able to detect something in the environment that's strange are the dogs that are able to pick out the cues in the environment that are new.
I've
The
called that
dog
the
that
yin and
goes,
yang. Yes.
yeah, so a dog that's sensitive to, oh, so that's a cue when you move your hand like that, but not when you do it like that. Gotcha. That's the same dog that will be sensitive to a gate opening or a gate shutting sounding different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You can't have it
those.
both ways, folks.
No, 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 no. We are those super learners learn super learning good things and super learning bad things. And if
Yeah.
your early life has been mostly about remember the shit that's around and get out of the way of it, that's going to affect what you look for. Like I'm a fairly skeptical bugger. So if something comes in an email saying, this is fantastic, you'll enjoy this, my first response is, yeah, so what are you getting out of it? How much does it cost?
Uh,
Somebody else who hasn't got that skepticism will go, oh, that's fantastic, that's free. So your underlying view of things would affect new events coming in.
yes.
So if somebody says, hey, why don't you try this? You'll enjoy it. No, I don't like new things. That's not
Yeah.
helpless. We're going back to the same thing. That's not learned helplessness. Somebody else could say, I went off to boarding school when I was 10 or 11. I was thrilled. I loved every minute of it. But there was still somebody in the bed next to me that cried the entirety of the first year. Yeah. And I'm going, I don't know what her problem is. I think this is great. This is cool. This is fun. Gosh, we were wicked.
I my
So,
I hear you. I could never send my two daughters away to summer camps because they hated it. But
yeah.
yeah. Was that learned helplessness or the fact that I just rocked their world? I don't know.
I don't know. It could be yeah. It's the fact that we're all different and we all have
Yeah.
different things. Thank goodness we all enjoy different things.
Yes. Well, I do
Yeah.
think it's fair to say that if a dog is, like you said, to use a quote, habitually exposed to unpredictable and uncontrolled punishment, yeah, I mean, they
And they're
could
going to be
develop
tired a
some,
lot of the time as well. That's
yeah.
very tiring to live in a war zone all the time.
Oh, yeah.
It's those differences that we have absolutely. I even experience it in a foreign country when you get tired. Or I remember the very first time I travelled, it's just 20 years ago, it was New Zealand, and over 21 days I slept in 11 different beds. And I
Oh,
remember waking up one night and not having a clue where I was for about 15 seconds. And I went to get out of the bed and I went straight into the wall because the
oh,
bed was against the wall. And I sat down again. I thought, just take it slowly. Where am I? What am I doing? Which room am I in? Because it was pitch black, absolutely pitch black. I mean, after that, I learned to always have one of those little plug-in lights, know where the bathroom is, but it was
yeah.
like, where am I? I don't know where I am. So you can imagine that happening to a dog. I don't
Yeah.
recognize anything. I don't know the smell of anything. Everything's different. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And it would be the same as if we're some people to travel to a new country is exciting. For other people, they've lost everything that's familiar.
Hmm.
It's not the same. It's not the same at all. And traveling to new things when you're able to cope with what's going on, you could get by. That could be exciting. But if you travel to something new without the skills to be able to cope with what's likely to happen, you have to be fearful of those situations.
Yes, sure. All right. So going back to wrapping up this,
I think another aspect
um,
of this is, we talk about skills a lot. If you're faced with a situation that you don't know what to do, you're likely to be more anxious about that situation, whether it's going to a new place or as your kids going to summer camp on their own, would they cope on their own? Whereas if you have a strategy for coping or you know what to do if, it can reduce the anxiety you might have about it. So I think for about a year and a half, I didn't pay for any car recovery service, like an AA thing. I can't remember why,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought, ooh, here am I going all the way around the country going to dog shows. If I break down, I'm buggered. In actual fact, if you break down on our motorways, you can always get somebody to get you off because they really don't want you on the motorway. But the minute I had that backup cover, it changed the journey. Well, if something goes wrong, I can just ring them because I've got the phone. But have you ever now been out when you haven't got a phone on you?
Oh gosh.
Try it,
Yes.
because there's no
Oh.
public phones around anymore. And if you break down, what are you going to do if your phone doesn't work or you haven't got your phone with you? Go to the
Oh
nearest
yeah.
house, knock on their
You
door.
strategized.
Well, exactly.
Yep.
So you need a plan. You need to think this through, because when it happens, oh, that's all right. I've got this instead, or I can do that instead. Having um, no way to get out of the situation you're in can make the situation you're in be more stressful. So part of, to me, the dogs that we've had that have come in that have been plainly, I don't want to learn anything new. I just can't at the moment. Life's just too stressful and I really don't think about it. I don't want to do about it. To me, over several months, your job is to give them more skills on puzzle solving. So, one of the tests that we used to look at with puppies was putting them, you know, how you open up a puppy pen and the puppies all know where the gate is and they'll come out together. If you then rearrange the pen so the opening's somewhere else, the little buggers will sit where the opening used to be and not work out they could get out somewhere else. So you put them in individually and see who would panic and not be able to get out and who would just go, there's the exit. So they would look at the environment and work out they could get out this way, or they could climb up and over, or they could go round away from the exit, go round the back and come out the other way. You know, if you turn a crate round 180 degrees but leave it open at the back, and see if the puppy can work out to go out the back of the crate to come out the crate. You not do that test?
Excellent.
Well,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Excellent.
So,
Excellent.
um, what you're looking for is not, oh, well, I can't get out here, I won't do anything. And we had this with people in college as well. So, we were teaching a year's course for people to return to work. It was a high area of unemployment, and the community college was taking people in to teach them computer skills so they could go and get jobs elsewhere. And one of the groups I had, when their computer didn't work, the guy just sat there for 20 minutes. And I go, not working there, Kevin? He said, well, I'll have to wait for the technician. It's not working. Okay, so what have you tried? Oh, nothing. I'm not allowed to touch the machine. Okay.
Mm.
And then I found out, you know, his background was that he'd worked in a factory environment where only a certain grade of engineer was allowed to meddle with the machines. So if it broke down, they
Yep.
weren't allowed to touch it and sort it out. Yep. So that
Mm.
aspect of I don't know how to problem solve, so I'll just have to sit here passively waiting till somebody comes along, and then you could end up reinforcing that passive behavior. And I think that's more what our learned helpless looks like. Oh, the passive puppy that sits in the crate goes, I don't know how to get out of this. Oh, well, there you are then. You know, maybe if we turn
Yeah.
the
There
crate
you are.
90 degrees and just make it a little bit easier each time, and you set up
Mhm.
situations where they can learn to do puzzle solving. So if you put a,
Even at a young age.
well, they can learn it at about 5 weeks old.
Yeah.
They do,
Yeah.
you know, because how do you walk otherwise? How do you get out the bed? How do you go and, you know, put your feet up on your mother? They're constantly puzzle solving, and it's to me, it's how have we lost it? So when they're brought up in an environment that's too um, lack of stimulation, they probably don't
Hmm.
get their puzzle solving skills extended.
Yeah. Or too much
Yeah,
stimulation.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I see that. I have a crew of 5 littles right now who I think probably lived together in their previous incarnation, and they are hunkered down together,
yeah.
and they have learned to just stay together.
You'll also
And so
get
now I'm
one,
tasked with,
you know, that will not do something because the other one always did it. I had a mother and
yeah.
daughter combination in Cavaliers, and the Cavalier, the younger one, her mother died when she was about 5, and she had no capacity to do anything because her mother had always done the barking. Let's go for dinner. Let's go this way. Let's go that way. And I'm going, oh my goodness, you need to learn to, you know, choose to do things by yourself. But I see that with people all the time. Oh, no, you'll have to tell me what to do. Okay. How's that
Mm,
working then?
mm,
Yeah, what are you going to do in this
oh,
situation? But yeah, So I
Yeah.
don't so much, let's
So
not use the word learned helplessness of just a very passive learner, where learning is something that's they've just learned to wait until it's done to them rather than become an active learner that goes out there and is prepared to fail to learn how to do something.
hmm
You know, the same
hmm
as Apple computers. Try that button, see what happens. Oh, well, never mind. You could have done that 25 years ago on a computer without somebody going, oh, you mustn't do that, you'll crash it. Yeah, so people became terrified. We ran courses for computing for the terrified. Now, how had they become terrified of
Oh,
computers? Because the user
I'm
interface
gonna break it.
so bad,
Mm-hmm.
so bad that if you didn't know what you were doing, you would break the computer. Yeah. Even people that, I mean, one of them was a group of bank managers. One of them picked the mouse up and put it on the screen. Yeah, and it is now,
Okay,
but this was like they'd never seen anything like that. You know, somebody else always did that
sure.
job, not them. But intuitively now, if you
Mm.
give kids these things, they will just explore and experiment and try where to go. It was the adults that
Mm.
hadn't learnt that fear of technology.
Mm.
But also, you know,
Mm.
trusting that the technologists that put it together understood things like health and safety. Can I kill myself if I try this? I don't know.
One would hope.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I agree. I think we need to get rid of learned helplessness as a label or as a term
Mm-hmm.
and just realize that, like your rescue setter and like my crew in the shelter, it's just time
Mm-hmm.
and changing things and see what happens when you change
And it's
things
their
or not
time.
ask for
It's
things.
their time, not your time.
Yes.
Yep. And it
Yeah,
needs, you know, it's looking for progress, not completion. You
exactly.
know.
I look for trajectory. Are we
Mm,
on the right
yeah,
path?
yeah,
And if you know, yeah, because getting out of the shelter is the best path.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
that's my opinion.
And that's probably
Yeah.
one of the best skills you can
All
give
right.
them is the ability to adapt to new environments. That doesn't mean you poke them
Oh,
in a new
yeah.
kennel every day, I'm sure, but you know, being able to adapt to new.
Oh gosh, no.
There was an
No. Mm-mm.
experiment done with that with an organization of assistance dogs. They, you know, the puppy walking period up to about 9 months old, they were given data that supported rehoming these dogs or changing these puppies' environments every 3 weeks so that the puppies got a
Yeah.
very rich environments to live in. So by the, they left the mother at 6 or 7 weeks, which as a dog breeder I think is very, very young, because they didn't want them to
Agreed.
over bond with the other puppies. They were to be assistance dogs. And every 3 weeks they were swapped to another puppy walker. Any idea how those turned
Mm.
out?
Yeah.
Yeah, not very good. So they had,
Yeah.
you know,
Not very good.
new people, new environments every 3 weeks. This was not good.
Ah,
Not good news at all.
no.
They broke most of those
No.
puppies.
No. 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 No.
Yeah, yeah.
No. Do we need to say that more? No.
You know, why would you? Yeah, why would you even think this is good? Oh well, the data showed it. I'm going, what? Laboratory beagles? Really? Wah, wah, wah,
Mm.
wah.
Yeah. We're
Make
better
them
than
more
this. We're better
resilient.
than that.
They weren't more resilient. They had become shut down. It's like
Mm.
foster kids constantly changing homes all the time. Yeah, they might have
Yeah.
been more resilient, but they had
Unpredictability.
no ability to actually form a relationship with the people they eventually lived with.
No.
Couldn't even train.
Mm.
Even their trainers were constantly changing as well, so they'd have a different trainer every week. That's
Ooh.
just so wrong. Just so wrong.
And one of the first things I did when I started this current position that I have is I said we are going to get rid of this obsession over training,
Uh-huh.
because I was very aware of working with anywhere from 75 to 100 volunteers. There's absolutely no way anybody would do anything remotely alike.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And but I could feel confident in that they would do a few things pretty close to each other, and that would be just sitting with a dog, or
yeah,
that would
yeah,
be using a slip and just getting them out of the habitat for a bit.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
I could predict that kind of similarity
yeah.
for them. So it's paying off for sure. Yeah.
Yep, yep,
All
yep.
right.
Because everybody would train, even though
Okay.
if you got all the trainers together, what they trained would be different.
Our little dog in the shelter was provided much control over her environment. She started to tell us what she remembered to do. This was not a feral dog. This dog had lived with people. She just had to pull that back into play, these skills. Our job was to set up the conditions under which she could express these skills. It was a combination of office fostering, time, and more time. A small team of people skilled with how to provide an environment for learning. As we record this little dog is available for adoption and likely will go home very soon. For more information and links to articles and courses, be sure to look at the episode notes and tell a friend, fellow trainer, dog person to take a listen to the podcast and give us a rating on Apple iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. Thanks so much for listening.